Hi, my name is Lucas Smith and I've often been told I'm too helpful. I was always a pretty extroverted kid. I could get along with anyone and always loved talking to people. As a teenager, I realized I wanted to work with others. My first thought was medical school. I really wanted to be a pediatrician. However, Mom and Dad weren't able to finance my goal. We didn't have a lot of money to throw around. Nobody in the family had ever been to college, least of all medical school. Unfortunately, I didn't have the grades to back up my dreams. It's a hyper-competitive world and I just couldn't cut it. That's no issue for me though. Instead, I decided to help my dad and Jake with the family business. We ran a small garage off the highway. I worked in the garage for 3 years until I was 21. I know it's not really a grand story. I was still living at home and there wasn't much going on. My day usually consisted of traveling to the garage, speaking to customers, and sometimes driving cars over for delivery. I wasn't great with mechanics, but I did discover some positive traits within myself. I was a great organizer and knew how to convince people. This helped in many ways. For example, both my dad and Jake are woefully unorganized people. I was able to help them create a system for their customer orders and bills. Apart from that, I was usually the guy who talked to people when something went wrong. I knew how to soften the blow when I told someone there was an issue with their transmission. All this was great, but I was feeling restless. First off, I wanted to live in the big city. My entire life up until then was spent in Winslow, Arizona. Don't get me wrong, I love my hometown. I mean, think about it. How many other people can say their town was in an Eagles song, right? But I needed a change of pace. More importantly, I wanted to live with diverse people and see how the world outside works. Itching for a change, I spoke to one of my friends who had moved to Chicago for college. I called him and asked if I could find a job there. So why do you want to move to Chicago, big guy? I'll tell you, it's not as fun as you think. Firstly, it's cold as hell, and the people can be a bit mean. I don't know if someone as generous as you could make it work out here. I know, but I want to do something different. Dad just wants to keep the shop running, and Jake is happy to help him with that. I'm usually just a third wheel here. I want to go to a place where I make a difference. I get that, I really do. When I first came here, I felt really overwhelmed. But as I got used to it, I realized that Chicago had become a second home. Hell, who am I to judge? I'll tell you what, I have a friend, Nancy. She's doing a road trip across Route 66, and I asked her to stop by Winslow. That's great. I'll show her around. Yep, I wanted to ask if you could show her around. But there's also something else. Nancy works as a hiring manager at the Mount Sinai Hospital. I know you didn't get to go to medical school, but you can ask her if there's any other way you can work there. That would be great. Hey man, thanks so much. With that, I had a chance to work at a hospital. Nancy was due to visit a few weeks after the call with Toby. I asked my parents if she could stay with us for a few days, and I also reached out to her via text. Nancy was a lovely girl, and she understood exactly where I stood. I didn't have the knowledge required to be a nurse, and there weren't any positions open to be an orderly. However, the hospital needed a receptionist. At first, I was unsure about taking up the job. Would I just be taking calls and setting up appointments? I decided to have a conversation with Nancy to put my mind at ease. Before she was set to leave, I asked her out for breakfast. Thanks for breakfast, Lucas. This local spot is just the bomb. And a big thanks to you and your family for being so hospitable. I didn't know that Winslow was so fascinating. I'll let you know if any position opens up at the hospital. Unless, of course, you're interested in the role of receptionist. Truth be told, Nancy, I'm a little worried that I won't be able to work with people if I take up that job. Won't it just be clerical work? I guess if you just go by the job description, yeah. But our last receptionist, Winona, left on really good terms with everyone at the hospital. Even though it doesn't sound very glamorous, the receptionist is usually the first person that a person visiting the hospital interacts with. You need to be able to talk to stressed-out parents or husbands waiting for news about a pregnancy. Winona left after one of the patients offered her a job at his company, not because she hated the job. The pay is also good and you'll be able to find a community at Mount Sinai. Haha, it's almost like you're trying to sell the job to me. No, it's nothing like that. To be frank with you, Toby, you're a really sweet guy. I think you have a knack for putting people at ease. I'm glad that Toby set this up because you would be the perfect fit for working with us. Consider it, okay? Bolstered by Nancy's job description, I took her up on the offer and traveled to Chicago for the job. You may think I'm crazy for traveling so far for such a small job, but it's been one of the most satisfying experiences of my life. Besides, if I had never taken the plunge, I wouldn't have met Mr. Fitzgerald or Camilla. Where would my life be then? Would I still be in Winslow, going through the motions at Dad's garage? Let me tell you about Mr. Fitzgerald. He was one of the first patients I formed a real bond with. After onboarding myself as a receptionist, one of the first things I realized was that I often had a lot of free time. That's not to say the workload was light. No, not at all. But I had a knack for getting things done quickly, and after my shift was over, I often stayed back to help people with odd jobs. I'll tell you this, hospital nurses and orderlies are some of the most overworked souls I have ever met. Most of the people I interacted with were usually dead on their feet, and I would go out of my way to help them. Sometimes I'd get them coffee or do errands for them. At other times I would accompany them while they interacted with patients. It was during one of these trips that I met Bradley Fitzgerald. He was a thin old man with clouds of wispy gray hair around his head. Although he looked wrinkled, he had a certain happiness in his voice and a gleam in his eyes that made him a joy to be around. While the nurse I was helping that day was turning the room over, Mr. Fitzgerald struck up a conversation with me. "So, you're new, eh? I haven't seen you around before. Filling in for someone?" "Nope, I'm actually the receptionist. My shift is over and I try and help out for an hour or so before I leave." "Well, I'll be. I thought everyone your age just looked out for themselves, but look at you. Say, you're not from Chicago, are you?" "No, sir. Actually, I'm from Arizona. Get out to here." "Really? Me too. Although I haven't been back home in ages. The last time I went was in the winter, and people mistook me for a snowbird." "Well, that's no biggie. I can tell you what's going on. The Cardinals are struggling, as always." "I know that with my Keister still in this hospital bed, young man. Tell me more about how you ended up here." That was my first conversation with Mr. Fitzgerald, but it wasn't the last. He and I struck up a fast friendship, and it was nice to have a mature, older figure who I could talk to about my life in the city. Although I loved my new job as a receptionist, I did agree with my friend Toby Chicago could be a bit cold sometimes. Literally and metaphorically. It was nice to have a fellow Arizonian to talk to about all these things. For his part, Mr. Fitzgerald regaled me with stories about his childhood and the past. Really stuff you don't hear much about nowadays. One thing struck me as odd, though. Mr. Fitzgerald was very secretive about his work. I could ask him about his hobbies, the weather, politics, culture, anything under the sun. But when it came to his career, he clammed up. When I spoke to Nancy about it, she was as clueless as me. Honestly, I don't really know much about that man. He transferred here from the Rush Medical Center after an operation. The nurse who attends to him told me that he had a recent liver surgery which had complications. The recovery is going to take a lot of time. He's old, and there are issues. Yeah, I know about all that. He complains about it enough, bless the guy. It must be no fun sitting in bed all day, but really no idea where he came from. Not a clue, it's not my department. I have heard some of the senior doctors discuss his case pretty seriously, so he must be someone important, but it doesn't concern me. Well, that's fair. I guess I should drop it too. Mr. Fitzgerald must have a reason for keeping his cards close to his chest. I didn't solve the mystery of Mr. Fitzgerald's profession during my time as a receptionist, but my bond with him only grew. However, after 4 months of working at Mount Sinai, I developed a crush that I thought would endanger our friendship. I had begun to notice this beautiful young girl who would come in and ask to be let in to see Mr. Fitzgerald. Something about her bowled me over completely. I could barely look her in the eye, and it was a little embarrassing. I had been more confident with high school crushes, for Pete's sake. As such, I had no idea who she was. Was she his granddaughter? A niece? I had no clue. However, she was the first visitor I had ever seen for Mr. Fitzgerald. I just knew her name, Camilla, and that she was family. In all the months I had been working at Mount Sinai, this was the first time Mr. Fitzgerald had a visitor. Camilla never stayed for long, she would only arrive at noon and leave before lunchtime. This was a fastidious routine, and she never arrived outside that schedule. I was mortified to find out that I was looking forward to the strike of noon. What was I looking forward to? A half-muttered conversation with a girl who didn't even know me. Even worse, she was related to one of my favorite patients. Bah. Whoever she was, her effect on Mr. Fitzgerald was instant. Usually he was pretty glum about the fact that nobody came to see him. I suppose that's why we both became so close. We were both alone in a way. I was far from my home, and Mr. Fitzgerald had some unseen trouble with his family. I'll tell you what, Lucas, the days feel so much nicer now. What makes you say that? Did the orderly take your suggestion to change the brand of Jell-O they serve you? What? No, something even better. I have a visitor now. Ah, yes, Camilla, right? Yes, how did you? Ah, right, you're the receptionist. Yeah, she's my granddaughter. Truth be told, this is the first time I've heard from her in almost 4 years. What? That's crazy. Is everything all right between you and your family? I don't really know how to respond to that, kiddo. My son, Camilla's dad, is a bit of a jerk. I don't want to bore you with details, but I run a small family business, and he always had a different vision from me. Family business? I know what you mean. My dad runs a garage back in Winslow. I know deep down he wanted me to stay and run the business with my brother, but I find myself at home here. Is it something like that? Yeah, but you're a good egg. My son isn't. I don't know how much you know about my medical condition, but I've been struggling with liver problems for almost a decade. I tried to keep running my business while my health deteriorated, but it just wasn't possible. Eventually, I had to hand over the reins to the board, and they elected my son as president of the company. Board? President? Sheesh, Mr. Fitzgerald, that sounds a lot fancier than working on Oldsmobiles. No. It's not that great ... I wish my son saw that money isn't everything. Ever since I've retired, he's basically stopped talking to me. Camilla and I were very close, and when she went off to college, we only spoke on the phone. After a while, that also stopped. She told me that her parents emotionally blackmailed her. Apparently speaking with me was distracting her from her studies. Right now she's a part of the family business, but I'm sure Cyrus is going to keep her under his thumb. She tells me about how poorly her father treats her. I want to do something about it, but in my condition, nobody thinks I'm fit to make a single decision. What? That sounds terrible. I'm so sorry. Yeah, sometimes I'm jealous of you, Lucas. You have a good relationship with your family. Hell, their biggest complaint about you is that you're too nice. Isn't that something? It was the first time I got a snippet of Mr. Fitzgerald's past. Although I still wasn't clear on what exactly he did as a career, I pieced together enough to figure out that his business drove a wedge between him and his family. That explained why he didn't have any visitors in Camilla's sudden reappearance. I also learned more and more about Cyrus, his son. Everything Mr. Fitzgerald told me about him just left a sour taste in my mouth. If I had it my way, I would have gone to meet him and give him an earful. But of course, that would have been a massive overstep by me. I guess Mr. Fitzgerald was just happy to have someone to talk to about his family woes. And thankfully, Camilla was nothing like her father. She was an absolute ray of sunshine. I got over my awkwardness eventually and started striking up conversations with her at the reception desk. Eventually, I realized that I was falling in love. Camilla was the person I wanted to be with. I just didn't know how to make that happen. After this change in our dynamic, things fell into a routine. Every day, Camilla would visit during the afternoon. In the evenings, I would speak to Mr. Fitzgerald. One week, however, Camilla stopped showing up for visits. Mr. Fitzgerald didn't let anything on, but I could tell that he was worried. I decided to surprise him on my day off with some of his favorite snacks. As I was walking up to his room, I saw the nurse who normally looked after Mr. Fitzgerald. She was jogging down the hall with a worried look on her face. As soon as she saw me, she waved and told me to go visit him. Apparently, he had asked for me specifically. When I walked into the room, Mr. Fitzgerald was holding back tears. I put the snacks down and walked over to him, and he began to speak. "Oh, Lucas, I need your help." "What happened, Mr. Fitzgerald? Is everything all right?" "Oh, I don't know. Camilla hasn't been coming to see me lately. I'm sure you've noticed that." "Yes, I wanted to ask you about it. Truth be told, I can't give you an answer. I don't know what's happened. She isn't picking up any of my calls either." Have you checked her social media? I don't know how all that stuff works, kiddo. Do you think that would help? Maybe. Let's give it a shot. After a little bit of digging, we found Camilla's social media account. I texted her and explained who I was, and that Mr. Fitzgerald was worried about her. She texted back saying it's Cyrus. He told me that if I visited again, I would face consequences. I found out something terrible. "Who's Cyrus?" "Ah, that's my no-good son. I knew he was behind this. Again, what is his problem?" Lucas, I know this is a lot to ask, but my health isn't going to get better anytime soon. Do you think you could travel to their home and get to the bottom of this? All right, Mr. Fitzgerald, I'll try and help in any way I can. Speak to Camilla and ask her if they're at the house in Miami. If that's the case, I'll pay for your travel and accommodation. Just figure out what's going on. I spoke to Camilla and confirmed that she was at the Fitzgerald holiday home in Miami with her dad and stepmother. I took some time off and headed to Miami. While I was waiting for my flight, I called my brother and filled him in on everything that had happened. Dude, are you crazy? How are you traveling across the country for some old geezer? He's not just some old geezer. He's my friend. I'm going to be in Miami from the 2nd of April. Do you think you can come to meet me? I'm not sure how I'm supposed to confront this Cyrus guy. I don't think so. There's a lot of work to do at the garage and I'm unsure about all this. Honestly, I think you're wasting your time. Just trust me. I'm sharing all the details of the address. If you can be there, be there. I'll go there the day after I reach, at 1:30. Look, man, you're asking a lot of me. I can't make any promises. Fine, I'll go myself. I was a little worried about showing up at the doorstep of Camilla's dad alone. From what Mr. Fitzgerald had told me about him, he was a deeply unpleasant man. But I couldn't just walk away without trying. So I went over to the address I had been given. It was an opulent mansion, and when I rang the intercom, I heard the voice of a man on the other end. With my heart in my mouth, I rattled off the prepared lie I had with me. Hello, who is this? Hi, I'm here on behalf of Bradley Fitzgerald. I need to speak to Camilla. Who are you? I'm from Mount Sinai Hospital. I have information regarding your father. It's urgent. Couldn't this have been done over a phone call? No, sir, it's about Camilla. She was caught breaking hospital protocol during one of her visits to the ward. Since Mr. Fitzgerald is a high-profile patient, the hospital administration sent me to clear the air with you first. Okay, come in. The mansion compound felt like something out of a video game. There were bodyguards, luxury cars, and pieces of opulent furniture everywhere. As I was escorted into the living room, I caught a glimpse of Camilla. Although she was shocked to see me, Camilla thought on her feet and took over from the butler accompanying me. I can't believe you're here. Thank you so much for helping my grandfather. Okay, listen, what I'm going to tell you is shocking. My dad is the reason behind Grandpa's poor health. What do you mean? Well, he's always been a dangerous, power-hungry man. I just didn't know how bad it was until I chanced across his unlocked phone. What I found shocked me. Dad had been texting a doctor and making sure that Grandpa's medications were given in the wrong dosage. It wasn't fatal, but it ensured he wouldn't be back to full health anytime soon. That's insane. I can't believe he would do that. Why didn't you come to us when you found out? I think my father caught on. At least he thinks I know something. All of a sudden, he asked us to travel to Miami for, in his words, a much-needed break. Along with that, a bodyguard began to tail me 24/7. I'm sure he reports back to my dad about who I call. I didn't know how to reach out to Grandpa until you texted me on social media. That's terrible. He's trying to police your every move. Yeah, right now I have a flash drive where I've managed to collect all the evidence. I need you to take it to Grandpa and see a lawyer. Our conversation was cut short as we approached the hall. Cyrus was sitting on a huge leather couch and his eyes flitted up to us disdainfully. So, what exactly has my daughter done? You'll have to excuse her. Lucas. Lucas? Yes, she's too fond of that old man. I was sweating bullets by this point. Even though the lie had gotten me through the door, I didn't know how to keep it going. Well, I had a conversation with your daughter about her misconduct, and she seems pretty remorseful. I am sure the hospital would understand, although such incidents can't be repeated in the future. I see. What exactly was this incident that had you all so bent out of shape? Well, actually. At this exact moment, the butler came into the room and began to speak to Cyrus in hushed tones. After their conversation was over, he looked up at me quizzically. Lucas, it seems your brother is at the doorstep of my house. He demands to be let in. Oh? How strange. Well, I had told him that I would be in Miami for some work, including my home address. No, but I guess he may have asked at the hotel where I was. It must be a family emergency, so I'll have to go and see what happened. Don't worry about your daughter. The hospital won't take any further action. I see. Well, take care, Lucas. Enjoy your stay in Miami. Although Cyrus was suspicious, he didn't stop me from leaving the house, with a flash drive on my person. I had managed to escape the lion's den, all thanks to my brother. When I was out of the compound, I immediately gave Jake a bear hug, much to his confusion. "What's the big deal? So did you finally realize that all this was a waste of time? I'm sure nothing was going on." "You don't even know the half of it." I filled in my brother about everything I learned, and he was dumbstruck. "Well, Lucas, you're like a legit spy. You should go and tell that old guy everything you learned right away." "I know. Cyrus needs to pay for everything he's done." I made my way back to Chicago as fast as I could. I told Mr. Fitzgerald about what Camilla had told me and showed him the contents of the flash drive. It had screenshots of texts and emails with a senior medical consultant specifying bribes and the medications to be tampered with. That snake. "I'm not done yet. I'm going to call my lawyers and make sure I get my company back. Not just that, I'm going to send Cyrus to prison." That was the start of a year-long legal battle. I also discovered the real identity of Mr. Fitzgerald. He was the owner of a multi-million-dollar retail chain that operated in the United States. No wonder he was so secretive. The man was super wealthy. I am sure people would treat him differently if they knew his real identity. The case was arduous, with top lawyers battling it out on either side, but the evidence against Cyrus was too much. The nail in the coffin came when Camilla testified against her own father. After a lot of deliberation, Cyrus was sentenced to prison and was forced to relinquish control of the business. The doctor who was in cahoots with him was fired in disgrace. Camilla became the acting director of the company, and Mr. Fitzgerald returned as an advisory member of the board. The story didn't end here, though. Camilla launched a full-scale investigation into all the executives within the company who worked closely with Cyrus, and a new secret came out: several people were involved in the ploy to keep Mr. Fitzgerald permanently bedridden. The scandal was too big to hide, and people began to talk. News agencies caught on, and everything could have spiraled out of control. However, I was able to act as an anonymous insider for a journalist and told everyone the truth. The company's stock wasn't in any jeopardy, and it felt as if the storm had finally passed. How did I deal with all this? Well, to be honest, I didn't worry about it too much. After Mr. Fitzgerald was discharged and Camilla became the director, the two of them were too busy to keep in touch with me. I understood and went about my work as a receptionist. A lot of people kept telling me to demand a cash reward for my work, but I politely refused. Even though Mr. Fitzgerald had hidden his identity from me, he was still my friend first and foremost. After the case had ended, I got an email from Camilla asking me to meet her. She was going to be in Chicago for a few days and wanted to have a conversation with me. I had finally gotten over my crush on her and looked forward to catching up with Camilla without any of the awkwardness I previously had. However, it seems the tables had turned. Camilla told me she had developed feelings for me ever since I visited her at the mansion in Miami. Although so much had been going on in her life, she couldn't get me out of her head. My feelings, although under control, were still strong. We decided to try and pursue a relationship and eventually told Mr. Fitzgerald. To my delight, he gave us his blessing and even asked whether I would like to work for the company. Obviously, I'm not just going to jump in and be the CEO. That would be absurd. But I'm going to work in our diversity, equity, and inclusion team to make sure everyone feels heard. To achieve that, I'm finally going to go to college. Yes, it's a bit odd for a 25-year-old to go to college, but I think I've finally found my calling. It's been a wild time ever since I came to Chicago. The adventure with Mr. Fitzgerald and Camilla is definitely the biggest thing, but I've also become more independent just by living my own life. More importantly, I've realized that I can be nice and still survive in the city. Sure, sometimes people can try and take advantage of you. I'm not saying that won't happen, but I'm a big believer in doing the right thing. If I had built a wall around myself like so many people do nowadays, I would never have developed a friendship with Mr. Fitzgerald. And if I hadn't done that, I would never have been able to help Camilla and eventually date her. The domino effect of the whole story comes from the simple fact that I wanted to help other people. Isn't that something?